You're now watching a clip from the Inspired by show. You can watch the full episode on our YouTube channel or listen on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure to head over there, leave us a 5-star rating if you enjoyed it, and follow the show. What's made you want to get into that industry, or what's attracted you to that concept of being a social entrepreneur?
I think it's my own story, really. We talk about our journey, don't we? And I don't really like the term our journey, but my journey started when I was 7 years old. I was raped by my stepfather, and that was the first of a series of sexual assaults and physical assaults over 5 years. And at 7 years old, I didn't really know what that meant or what had actually happened to me. I couldn't describe it, but that changed my life. That really was the point that everything changed for me. And by the time I was 12 years old, I knew that I wanted to commit my life to helping transform other people's lives, but particularly young people.
Wow, David, everything you've shared is just so raw. And I first of all really appreciate you sharing it here. Now, every time I've spoken to you, David, we've known each other for quite a few years, and I've seen you open up more and be way more vulnerable about your story. It wasn't just something you could just very quickly share so publicly. How have you found that processing journey of, first of all, processing your story and what happened to you, and now also sharing it?
Well, I think if you go back to those earlier times in my life and how things changed, the pivotal moment at 7. But when I was 12 years old, there was another situation that developed where basically I went to the local police station and told the police that I'd experienced 5 years of physical and sexual abuse by my stepfather. Little did I know that the police officer I was speaking to played golf with my stepfather. So instead of doing what they should do, they put me in the back of a police car, took me home, and told my stepfather basically what I'd said. That resulted in me spending the next 3 months in hospital. I'm not going to go into the detail about the injuries, but I was in hospital for 3 months, and then I spent the next few years living on the streets on and off, or sofa surfing and things like that. But at 16, 17, I started going to a youth group, and I met this incredible youth worker. She's just one of those people that you warm to immediately, very engaging. You know, the kind of person that you meet and you never forget. We started to bond, and after a period of time, I felt safe enough to tell her what had happened and what I'd been through. And the way she responded to that was she looked me directly in the eyes and she said, "You know what? You've been through a shit time. What are you going to do about it?" Now, that's not the way you would expect somebody necessarily to respond to that kind of story. I had no idea how she was going to respond, but it worked for me. It set me on a path of transformation. I spent the next 10 years thinking about getting support, getting therapy, getting off the drugs that I was using. And by the time I was around 27, I knew that I wanted to move to England and start a career in social work, social care. And I suppose the beginnings of my social entrepreneurship, of course, back then, I mean, people didn't even use that term, and I certainly didn't know what it meant. But I did come to England. I had no qualifications because during that time in my teenage years, and by the way, tune into the accent, I'm Irish. I was living on the streets at the time of the Civil War. So it's not just being on the streets, it's streets with bombs and, bullets, gunfights, all that kind of stuff. So I survived all of that, and I knew that I wanted to help other people who'd been through some kind of difficult experience or some kind of trauma, or who just hadn't had the best start in life. But, with the naivety of youth, I came to England, no qualifications, didn't know how to start, didn't know what to do. So I went to the job centre, basically to claim my benefits, of course. And there was a scheme at the time that I knew nothing about while I lived in Ireland, but I found out about it when I came here. And the scheme was, if you'd been unemployed for more than 12 months, you were able to go, it was like an apprenticeship type thing, but you were able to go and you got, I think it was £10 a week extra over and above your dole money, as it was called in those days. But you also got a daily allowance for food when you're on your apprenticeship thing, and travel money like bus fares and stuff. When I went to see them and talk about it, there were two options. Get this, two options. You could either be a mechanic or a hairdresser. You know me, you've known me for years. I'm not practical at all. I was never going to be a mechanic, and I'm not interested in hairdressing. I would like to have a decent haircut, but I'm not interested in hairdressing. As an unemployed young man of 27, newly arrived in England, I helped create a new scheme for people that wanted to get into social care. And I was then the first person that was placed via the scheme. So I went to a local children's home in Manchester, where I was based at the time. I encouraged them to join the scheme. They did. I then told them I was their first placement. I can't remember the terminology we used at the time. I'm quite old now. It's a long time ago. It's half my life ago, at least. Anyway, so I basically ended up working there as a full-time volunteer. I didn't get paid a wage. I basically just got my benefits plus this extra £10 a week. But they also said I had to have the bus fare. Where that children's home was from where I lived at the time, I could walk in 15 minutes. But the only bus route was into the city centre of Manchester and back out again. So I walked every day, but I was made to take the bus fare. So I was getting a couple of quid every day for bus fares. It was another way of supplementing my income. And I think that's always been there. You know, the extra £10 a week, getting the free meal during the day, a couple of extra quid for the bus fares, all different income streams, you know, very small scale, but income streams. And it made me start to think about, you know, what am I doing in the future and how I might generate different income streams. But it was when I was in that children's home, when I started working there as a volunteer, I started to share my story, first of all, with some of the other staff. And that didn't go well at all. Didn't go well at all. It was actually an organisation that was run by the Catholic Church. And everyone who I talked to, because I'd grown up in Ireland, they assumed I was from a Catholic background. And as soon as I mentioned it, they really it was almost like they closed ranks and shied away from it. And I thought, hold on a minute. What that man did to me, he tried to shame me. You're not going to shame me now as an adult. You're just not going to do it. I'm not going to let you. And that was at the point where I started to think, I need to tell more people. I need to be more open about this. And over the years, I think I've just shared bits of it with different people. And it got to the point where I'm actually not, I wouldn't say happy. That's the wrong way to phrase it. I'm willing to share any element of it. If anybody wants to talk about it, I'm willing to explain it. I'm willing to talk about it. And I've, you know, shared it over the years. Maybe different people have heard different parts of the story. Very few people have heard the whole story and all the detail. But I think a few years ago when I started doing public speaking and started learning the power of sharing your story and how people engage with you, I think that accelerated the frequency with which I share, and also the opportunity to share more publicly and indeed on podcasts like this.
Yeah, wow. Every time I hear you talk about your story though, David, I get shivers, because the bit that frustrates me, if I can, about your story is that you trusted certain people with parts of it and they betrayed that trust. Mm. They criticised you, judged you, shamed you. And I can really relate to that from my own personal story, obviously very different, but similar feelings. How did you build up that trust again? So, you know, police betrayed your trust very early on to the point where you were in hospital for 3 months. Mm. How did you then find the trust again? Do you think it was just time, or is there something that you would recommend to people that maybe have started trying to tell their story, open up, ask for help, and then felt that shame?
Mm. It wasn't just the police though. Back then, at 12 years old, when I told the police and they took me back to the house, I was in hospital for 3 months. No one in the medical profession did anything about it either. The medical staff asked how I'd sustained all the injuries. My stepfather said we'd had an argument. I jumped out of my bedroom window and landed on the garage roof. He told them that's how I got my injuries. They believed him. They didn't check it out. They failed me as well. I wasn't going to school for those 3 months. And then after that, I subsequently ran away and was kind of sofa surfing and living on the street and all the rest of it. What did the education service do? They failed me as well. And then as I've just said, when I started doing that voluntary work in Manchester, well, what I thought was going to be the start of a new career in social care and social entrepreneurship, they tried to shame me as well. They tried to somehow or other keep me quiet and make me feel that I shouldn't talk about it. And you know me well enough. Try to keep me quiet. That is not going to work. And the way I look at it is, yes, there have been multiple people who have, if you like, betrayed my trust. I've shared things with them and they've let me down. But, you know, over the years, there's been many, many more people who have reciprocated, no, that's the wrong word, respected, that have trusted them enough to tell them. And sometimes they open up and share things back, or sometimes it's led to collaborative work or collaborative projects. And even though I've had those experiences of people letting me down, I still have a mantra in life or a philosophy in life, and that is trust everybody until they give you a reason not to. Otherwise, they win. I'm not going to let that happen to me.
It's powerful, right? And trust is what I believe is one of the quickest things to build and the longest thing to build and the quickest thing to lose. For me, I trust really easily. Like, buy me a coffee, 5-minute chat, and I'll probably tell you my life story. But not everyone's like that. At what point, David, did you feel properly comfortable to start talking about what happened to you, or properly, openly, or in front of a microphone or on stage?
I started to tell people in person when I was around 27, 28, when I came to Manchester. I told therapists in those 10 years that I was in therapy. That's part of the process, really, of therapy. But in terms of saying it out loud on a stage or to a microphone, that's probably only been in the last 5 or 6 years.
Wow. And what journey did you go through that made you think, do you know what, Chloe or David, now's the right time?
When you start thinking about when is the right time for anything, you can overthink it. It's almost like you then get to the point, there's never going to be a right time. So it's actually better just to go, bollocks, now's the right time, let's just do it.